We can learn more from each other than by listening to K. Why don't you encourage people to hold group discussions on particular topics and have organized activities to facilitate dialogues and relationships? Are you listening to K? Or are you listening to yourself? K is pointing out that listen to yourself. See how conditioned you are. Not I am telling you that you are conditioned, but by listening to yourself, you learn infinitely more than by listening to a lot of other people, including K. But when you listen to K, he is not instructing you. He's putting up a mirror in front of you to see yourself, right? And when you see yourself very clearly, you can break the mirror. And the man who holds up the mirror, right? So do we clearly see ourselves? If we depend on relationship, or on dialogues or associations and institutions, right, to teach us, to help us, to make things clear what we are, then we depend. And when we depend on others, whether in institution, encounter groups, small groups, and so on, what are you learning? And what do you mean by learning? Please, this is again a very serious question. Learning, as we know, is accumulating knowledge. I have learned about myself that I am all this, all the pain, the misery, the confusion, the extraordinary travail of life. I am all that. I have learned it. That is, somebody has told me, or I have learned about myself. So learning, as far as we know now, learning at school, learning about ourselves, is accumulating knowledge about ourselves, right? And the questioners, K says, knowledge is the very root of disorder. Go slowly. Knowledge is necessary in the field of technology, in daily life, but psychologically, knowledge is the very root of disorder. Because knowledge is the past, right? Knowledge is always, whether in the future or in the past or in the infinite future, is limited, always, right? Because based on experience, hypothesis, conclusions, change is a constant addition, so taking away, right? Therefore, it's very limited. So, can I look at myself without the previous knowledge or conclusion when I looked at myself? You understand my question? I've looked at myself all yesterday, or few hours of yesterday, and I find that I'm this, that, other thing. I'm depressed by it, and I'm elated by it. All that's going on. That becomes yesterday's knowledge. And with that knowledge, I observe myself again. Right? We do this, right? So, knowledge is bringing about constant repetition. Mechanical, psychologically. And also, if you go into the matter very carefully among the scientists and so on, they are also beginning to discover knowledge is a hindrance in certain areas of discovery. Right? So, you are not learning or discovering anything from K. You are the storehouse of past history. That's a fact. You are the history of mankind, right? And if you know how to read that book, you don't have to depend on anybody, on discussions or relationship or organized groups and all that kind of thing. Right? I'm not saying you should not discuss, you should not have relationship, you should not have this and that. All that one is pointing out is, as long as you depend for your understanding yourself on others, then you are lost. You have had leaders, haven't you? Religious leaders, political leaders, every kind of specialist who will tell you what to do, how to raise your children, how to have sex. You have every kind of leader for the last 100,000 years or more. And where are you at the end of it? Do ask these questions, please. We are what we are because we have depended on others. Somebody to tell us what to do, what to think, which means we are being programmed all the time. And to understand ourselves, there's every opportunity through relationship, through discussion. But if you depend on them, you're lost. Is this clear, this question? Not that you must agree with speaker, but see the consequences of depending on others, depending on governments to bring order in this chaotic world. Depending on a guru, depending on the priest, whether it's pope or local priest. You understand? So the question is really, one is the storehouse of all mankind, right? One is the rest of mankind. And if one look at that very closely, with a great deal of hesitation, affection, then you begin to read what you are, which then is flowering. But if you depend, then you live with pain and anxiety and fear.